It began like a whisper in the dark, an unmarked car gliding through the quiet roads near Beijing Capital Airport. No one paid much attention at first. It was past midnight, the streets nearly empty, when a small clip began circulating online. It showed a vehicle moving cautiously through the shadows, its headlights dimmed, its windows tinted black. But as viewers looked closer, a chill ran down their spines. Because according to the voice captured in that video, the man inside that car was none other than the missing actor, Menglong, a respected figure in the entertainment world. Yu had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Official reports said little, and the government remained silent. But this clip, this grainy, shaky footage, was the first real piece of evidence the public had seen in months. And it changed everything. The video, reportedly filmed near an area close to the Beijing Capital Airport, seemed at first unremarkable. But when viewers listened carefully, they heard a man's voice, low but unmistakable, saying the words, "This is Yu Menglong." That single sentence sent a wave of shock across social media, and almost instantly, something strange began happening. Those who tried to share the video on Chinese platforms found their accounts locked or deleted within seconds. Comments vanished, user profiles disappeared, and hashtags were erased from trending pages. The clip had become forbidden material, which raised the question, what was in this video that was so dangerous? When online investigators replayed the footage, they began noticing more details. The dull roar of airplanes in the background suggested the car was moving near a runway, confirming the location was indeed close to the airport. And then came the most crucial discovery, something almost everyone had missed the first time. Zooming in frame by frame, netizens spotted the car's license plate, Beijing E5XF17. In China, that blue background with white letters meant one thing. It was a privately owned vehicle registered in Beijing. And with that detail, the crowdsourced investigation began. Online sleuths speculated that if the car truly belonged to someone connected to Yu Menglong's case, then tracing that plate could reveal who was responsible for transporting him or his body that night. The theory grew darker. If this footage indeed captured Yu Menglong being moved under the cover of darkness, it meant one terrifying thing. Whoever owned that car might be directly connected to his torture and death. But the story didn't end there. As people continued digging, a new and far more disturbing suspicion began to spread. According to several online sources, before his death, Yu Menglong had been secretly imprisoned inside a place called the Qihao Art Museum, a building located in the Chaoyang district of Beijing. At first, it sounded impossible. Why would anyone imprison a celebrity inside a museum? But the more people learned about this place, the more sense it made. Public records showed that the museum's address was Building 2, Number 8, Xinuan South Road Courtyard, part of the old 751 D Park complex, a site once belonging to a state-run factory. On the surface, Qihao Art Museum appeared like any other gallery. But those who had visited described something entirely different, a cold, silent labyrinth of concrete and metal. The architecture was oppressive, almost hostile. Every corridor seemed to narrow as you walked deeper in. The walls gray, uneven, unfinished absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Triangular structures dominated every angle, creating a sense of imbalance, confusion, and fear. Even the air inside felt heavy. One visitor described it as a place built to trap sound, and maybe even souls. It was here, according to netizens, that Menglong had been held captive for an unknown length of time. The museum's current name, Qihao Art Museum, wasn't its original identity. It had once been a project called a 26 Space, renovated and renamed by two men with deep political and financial connections. One of them was Ji Guangguang, allegedly the illegitimate nephew of a former Chinese premier. The other, his partner, known only as Shi Tuo, had led the redesign of the building himself. He covered the entire interior with exposed cement walls, removing windows, sealing off exits, and creating an environment that felt more like a bunker than a gallery. It reopened to the public last year. And on social media, photos surfaced showing Menglong posing inside that very space, leaning against the gray railings, smiling faintly on the narrow outdoor staircase. At the time, no one thought much of it. But now, those same photos have become evidence. Because when viewers rewatched Menglong's final live stream before his disappearance, they noticed something horrifying. The wall behind him in that video, the gray, uneven texture. The faint industrial lighting looked exactly like the walls inside the Qihao Art Museum. Even the echo in his voice matched the acoustics of a confined underground corridor. One detail chilled investigators to the core. Some claim that if you zoom into the reflection of his water bottle during that live stream, you can faintly see the outline of that same corridor behind him. It was as if he had been trying to send a message, silently crying for help. During that broadcast, he appeared tense, distracted. Several viewers remember him whispering numbers that made no sense. 5, 4, and at one point, barely audible. The words "help me." No one understood then. They thought it was a glitch, a trick of the microphone. But now, in hindsight, it feels like the final signal from a man trapped beneath the surface of the city, begging for rescue. The night that video was filmed, the night that car drove toward the airport, may have been the night Menglong's story ended. Or perhaps it was the night someone tried to erase it forever. No one knows for sure where he was taken or who ordered it. But one thing is clear, the truth is buried somewhere between that museum's concrete walls and the shadows of Beijing's power. And as the evidence piles up, one question haunts everyone who's followed this case. Was Menglong's final performance not on stage, but in a prison disguised as a gallery? The Qihao Art Museum on paper is just another contemporary gallery in Beijing's bustling Chaoyang district. But for those who've dared to step inside, the building tells a very different story. It is not a place of inspiration. It is not a home for art. It is a space that feels alive, pulsing with something dark, something that feeds on silence and fear. People who visited described the same unsettling sensation. The air feels heavy, the temperature unnaturally cold. Every step echoes too long, as if the walls are listening. The corridors stretch and twist in strange, geometric ways, dominated by sharp triangular angles that seem designed to disorient. Even the ceiling lights are stark and unforgiving, illuminating nothing but gray cement and shadow. This is where Menglong was allegedly held captive, a place that looks like a museum but breathes like a prison. To understand how this building came to exist, we have to go back a few years. The site once belonged to the 751 factory, part of Beijing's industrial heritage. When the factory shut down, the area was redeveloped into what is now known as the 751D Park Complex. a trendy zone of art, fashion, and design. But within that complex, tucked behind an unmarked gate, stood Building 2, number 8. Shinuan South Road Courtyard, the future home of the Qihao Art Museum. At first, it was called a 26 space, a renovation project led by two figures whose names now carry heavy weight in this story, Ji Guangguang and Shi Tuo. Ji Guangguang wasn't just anyone. According to multiple reports, he is the illegitimate nephew of former Chinese Premier Li Peng, a powerful political lineage that stretches deep into the roots of the Chinese communist elite. Together with his partner, Shi Tuo, he took over the abandoned factory space and began transforming it. But the goal, as many now believe, was never to create an art gallery. Shi Tuo, who oversaw the redesign himself, stripped the building of its warmth. He covered every wall with raw, exposed cement. He sealed windows, eliminated natural light, and built long underground corridors lined with white fluorescent bulbs. He called it minimalist architecture. But to those who have seen it, it feels more like an industrial cell, sterile, confined, and haunted. After multiple rounds of redesign, the site reopened to the public last year under its new name, Qihao Art Museum. It presented itself as a space for experimental art, a fusion of brutalist design and modern expression. But beneath that surface, something else was happening. Several photographs began circulating online showing Menglong at that very location. In one, he leans casually against a gray railing on an outdoor staircase, dressed simply, smiling faintly. In another, he stands in a narrow hallway. Behind him, the same distinctive concrete texture that would later appear in his final live stream. At the time, fans thought nothing of it. The photos looked like any other promotional shoot. But after his death, when the live stream was re-examined, every detail took on new meaning. The walls, the lighting, even the subtle echo of his voice matched perfectly with the environment of Qihao. Experts who analyzed the video confirmed that the room he appeared in lacked acoustic reflection, meaning it was built with dense materials, like concrete, designed to absorb sound. It's the kind of environment one finds in underground bunkers, laboratories, or prisons. And that's exactly what many believe. The Qihao Art Museum had become a covert detention site disguised as a cultural space. One particularly chilling account came from a former employee who claimed that part of the museum's lower level was restricted to the public. Access was controlled by keycard, and even staff members were forbidden to enter without permission. The area, they said, extended deep underground further than the official blueprints showed. Visitors described the place as suffocatingly silent, with the hum of the ventilation system echoing like a distant heartbeat. Some spoke of strange vibrations in the floor, as if heavy machinery was operating beneath them. And a few claimed that they saw faint light leaking from cracks under locked doors. If the rumors are true, this was where Menglong spent his final days. In his last known live stream, the background behind him was unmistakable, a gray, uneven cement wall, identical to those of the museum. Some internet sleuths went further, enhancing the video frame by frame, and claimed they saw a faint reflection in his water bottle, resembling the corridor of Qihao itself. Whether that's real or a digital illusion, it doesn't change what he seemed to be signaling: a desperate call for help. Commentator Li Mu Yang later pointed out that the timing of the live stream, the lighting pattern, and the sound environment all align with what would have been nighttime hours inside the Qihao basement. In other words, it is entirely possible that Yu Menglong's last broadcast to his fans was made from within his own prison. But who built this prison, and for what purpose? According to public records, the museum was privately operated but had strong connections with state cultural authorities. It was officially listed as part of Beijing's cultural heritage and public welfare projects, a category that allowed significant government oversight while keeping its true operations opaque. And if that sounds like the perfect cover for something sinister, it's because it is. Some investigators now suspect that the Qihao Art Museum wasn't merely an art venue, but a site used for illicit detentions, experiments, or human preservation projects the kind of activity that could only exist under the protection of powerful figures. The pieces start to connect. A politically linked family, a sealed underground space, a vanished actor, and a government too silent to explain. The walls of Qihao aren't just concrete. They're witnesses. They've seen things no one was meant to see. When you look at the photographs today, with their stark geometry and lifeless gray, it's hard not to imagine Yu Menglong walking those same corridors, searching for a way out. Maybe he thought someone would find him. Maybe that live stream was his final act of resistance, a coded message from a man who realized that art in this place had become a weapon. And as the investigation deepens, one question grows louder. What kind of art museum needs locks, guards, and underground chambers? Because if the Qihao Art Museum truly holds the answers, then behind those cement walls lies not creativity but cruelty disguised as culture. It began with a single post, a message that appeared on an obscure, encrypted forum late one night and vanished less than 5 minutes later. But for those who saw it and for the few who managed to capture screenshots before it was deleted, the contents were beyond disturbing. The post was chaotic, written in a mix of English, Japanese, and Chinese, filled with wild sentences and feverish energy, as if its author were under the influence of something powerful. The user's location, according to digital traces, was Tokyo, Japan. No one knew who they were, but their words would ignite a new chapter in the Yu Menglong mystery. It began like a taunt. You stupid China pigs. Still searching for the body, still running your Hollywood petitions. That's absolutely hilarious. Let me tell you a secret. Yu Menglong's body was never cremated. What his mother took home was nothing more than a craft we carefully prepared for her. The real Yu is now very safe and very perfect, even more perfect than when he was alive. The writer claimed to be one of the people involved in what they called the Art Project. They wrote that a man referred to as Dr. Oft as King. Kagawa had used advanced bioplastic preservation technology to freeze Yu Menglong's final expression, a mix of terror and unwillingness, into a masterpiece. It's the most perfect piece of art I've ever seen. The post continued. Want to see it? Go to Beijing's Qihao Art Museum. It's located in the non-public underground private collection room. If you're lucky, you might catch a glimpse of him, but you'll probably need a special ticket to get in. Oh, and by the way, Kimi Chow is there too. They're neighbors now. The message ended there. Then it was gone. Deleted. Wiped from the forum's servers. But not fast enough. Screenshots spread like wildfire through online communities. First in small chat groups, then across social media platforms before censors could shut them down. Some dismissed it as a cruel hoax. But others, especially those who had already suspected a deeper conspiracy, saw it as confirmation of their worst fears. Because the name Doctor Kagawa wasn't random. In Menglong's medical records, leaked earlier by anonymous insiders, there was a reference to a Japanese surgeon named Takao Kitagawa, the same man who had reportedly performed a surgery on Yu before his death. And that's where things got even darker. Digging through archives, internet investigators discovered that the architect of the Chihao Art Museum was also Japanese Tadao Ando, a renowned designer known for his minimalist concrete structures. According to several independent sources, Ando and Kitagawa were brothers. If that's true, it means the man who designed the museum's cold. Imprisoning walls was related to the doctor who allegedly operated on Yu Menglong and perhaps preserved his body. Public records show that Tadao Ando's architectural projects in China often fall under the classification of cultural heritage and public welfare constructions. That label gave him access to state-sponsored funding and allowed him to work closely with Chinese cultural authorities. In other words, he wasn't just a foreign architect working in China. He was part of the official cultural network. But there's more. In 2009, Ando underwent multiple organ transplants after losing several organs to cancer. His brother, Dr. Kitagawa, was one of the physicians overseeing the treatment. It was during this time, investigators believe, that the two became involved with certain high-ranking officials in Beijing, Shanghai, and Jiangsu men who allegedly arranged access to medical and anatomical materials that were not meant for research. But for something much darker, the theory spreading online is that these two brothers, one an architect, and the other a surgeon, that became intermediaries in an underground trade, a network that trafficked in human plastination, ritual exhibitions, and organ commerce disguised as medical or artistic collaboration. To many, this sounded like fiction, a story too grotesque to be true. But then people remembered Body Worlds, the traveling exhibition that displayed real human bodies preserved in lifelike poses. The technology behind it, plastination, had originated decades ago in a German lab and later spread to Asia. In China, several facilities were accused of sourcing unclaimed bodies from prisons and hospitals. So what if the Chihao Art Museum, with its underground chambers and sealed-off rooms, wasn't just an art venue, but a modern-day catacomb, housing preserved human remains? According to the deleted post, Yu Menglong's body was being kept in what the writer described as the non-public collection room, only those with special access or tickets. As the message mockingly called them, could see it. The author's tone wasn't remorseful. It was proud. Gleeful, even. They described Yu's preserved expression as so flawless. It transcended life itself. A few days later, independent Chinese commentators began connecting dots. Commentator Li Muyang, whose previous videos had broken parts of the story, stated that the language and phrasing used in the post suggested it was written by someone familiar with anatomical preservation, not a random troll. He also confirmed that Dr. Takao Kitagawa was indeed a licensed surgeon based in Japan, with previous research ties to medical universities in Beijing. Even more disturbing was what followed. Netizens discovered a 2017 interview in which Tadao Ando spoke about art that captures the soul at its most vulnerable moment. At the time, no one understood what he meant. But now, with these allegations, those words have taken on a chilling new meaning. By now, It was no longer just an online rumor. International observers began noticing the story, and Western news outlets cautiously referenced unverified reports of a possible human preservation scandal in Beijing. The Chinese government, however, remained completely silent. No denials, no statements, just silence, the kind that screams louder than any answer. Meanwhile, whispers spread about other missing figures. The mysterious line from the post, Kimi Chow is there to send shockwaves through fan communities. Some began re-examining old disappearances, wondering if more than one celebrity had become part of this alleged collection. Could this all be coincidence? Perhaps. But when coincidences start to form patterns, they stop being random. The Qihao Art Museum had always claimed to be a space for boundary-pushing art. But maybe those boundaries weren't creative. Maybe they were human. Maybe in their pursuit of power, immortality, and aesthetic control, someone decided that even death could be redesigned. If the post was telling the truth, then Menglong didn't simply die, he was transformed, turned into a permanent exhibit. His final emotion, fear, resistance, pain frozen forever under glass. And that raises the most horrifying question of all. Was this the ultimate act of censorship, to turn a man into an object? To silence him, not just in life, but in death. The story of Menglong's disappearance and the horrifying rumors surrounding the Qihao Art Museum spread like wildfire across China's tightly controlled internet. For years, silence had been the default response to injustice. People whispered, then deleted their own words out of fear. But this time, something different happened. Something changed. The people refused to stay quiet. It began with a few brave users on Weibo and Bilibili reposting fragments of the story. Each time the government deleted a post and 10 more appeared. Each time an account was banned, another was created. Within days, hashtags demanding answers had been viewed millions of times before being erased. But the outrage had already moved beyond the screen. This wasn't just about one actor anymore. It had become a symbol of everything that ordinary citizens had endured for decades: corruption, secrecy, and abuse of power hidden behind smiling faces and propaganda. Then, another fire ignited. Actresses and actors who were rumored to be connected to Menglong's case started facing massive backlash. Two names led the storm: Seren and Fan Shi, both accused by online investigators of involvement or silence during Yu's imprisonment. Their social media pages flooded with comments. Endorsements vanished overnight. Concerts, dramas, and brand deals collapsed. And just as the dust began to settle, another name rose into the center of public fury: Tian Hairong. Tian Hairong was a famous actress, once beloved by millions. She was also known as the widow of Shu Ming, a powerful figure described in earlier reports as the white glove of Bo Xilai, a political insider accused of deep corruption. Tian's latest project, a historical film titled The Spark, was intended to glorify one of the founding fathers of the Chinese Communist Party, Li Dexiong, and his revolutionary efforts between 1919 and 1951. But when the film premiered, it crashed spectacularly, despite being backed by the government. The Spark drew almost no audience. Theaters were empty. The few who did attend left scathing reviews online, calling it pure propaganda. What made things worse was that the authorities allegedly ordered schools and workplaces to buy group tickets to boost the numbers. Parents were told they had to pay for their children's tickets out of pocket, some as young as 2 years old. That decision backfired. Outraged parents took to social media, posting photos of toddlers wearing diapers in theater seats, sarcastically saying, "Even babies are being forced to save the box office." Others began reselling tickets online for a fraction of their price, mocking the entire production. The backlash became so intense that the film's rating dropped to historic lows, and the box office data itself came under suspicion. Investigators soon discovered evidence of what they called ghost screenings, fake ticket sales meant to inflate revenue numbers. When the fraud was reported, several showings mysteriously disappeared from the official listings overnight. It wasn't just a failed movie anymore, it was a public humiliation. For the first time in years, people across China were united not by patriotism, but by anger. The lies were too obvious, the manipulation too crude, the propaganda too insulting. And then came the collapse of one of China's biggest entertainment companies, Mango Excellent Media. The parent of Tanu Media, the same company, accused by citizens of covering up corruption within the industry. In just 2 weeks, from September 30th to October 15th, Mango's stock price plunged by over 12 billion yuan, or roughly 7 billion US dollars in value. It was one of the most dramatic crashes in recent Chinese corporate history. But what truly shocked the public wasn't the loss itself, it was Mango Media's reaction. Instead of offering transparency or compassion, the company lashed out on their internal platform. A message appeared that read, "You sympathize with your fish. That's fine. But don't interfere with us. Otherwise, you'll end up just like your fish. You won't live past Chijeshi Oshim." The message spread instantly, a direct threat to the public, referencing Menglong's age at the time of his death. It was a moment that exposed the true nature of those in power: arrogant, unrepentant, and cruel. Even after the outrage, Mango Media doubled down. In Malaysia, one of its overseas subsidiaries hired a law firm, Barit Partners, to issue a statement claiming that online comments about Mango were false and defamatory. The statement warned that legal action would be taken against anyone who continued to spread rumors. They even tried to mask their reputation by partnering with Malaysian universities, claiming to promote artistic and cultural exchange programs. But citizens weren't fooled. Online users in Malaysia began sharing warnings about Mango Media, urging their communities to stay away from what they called a predatory organization hiding behind entertainment. Meanwhile, respected commentator Song Tsuda, known for his inside knowledge of the entertainment world, released a new video that tore open the industry's rotting core. He spoke about money laundering, drug abuse, and sexual exploitation running rampant within the system. He described a world where stars became tools for political and financial elites, where every scandal could be buried with the right amount of money, and where anyone who refused to play by their rules was destroyed. Think about it. Song said, "Have you ever heard of the child of a senior official being bullied in the entertainment industry? No. It's always the children of ordinary people, powerless, voiceless, disposable." Those words struck deep, because that's exactly what Menglong represented. The child of no one important, a man who dared to speak up and paid the ultimate price. Song went further, claiming Yu had been collecting evidence of money laundering and illegal arms trade, storing it all on a small USB drive. When the elites found out, there was only one possible outcome. They had him followed, beaten, tortured, and eventually silenced. That revelation, though unverified, was enough to ignite global attention. People began calling Menglong the whistleblower who never got to speak. By now, the case had moved far beyond borders. Western journalists, YouTubers, and human rights activists started covering it. Every new video, every analysis, every update pushed the story higher into international consciousness. The Chinese state tried to drown it with silence, but silence only made it louder. From Beijing to New York, from Kuala Lumpur to London, people were watching. The outrage that began with one mysterious video had turned into a movement, a collective cry for truth. And yet, the more light was cast on the entertainment industry, the deeper its shadows seemed to grow. Because as Menglong's name echoed around the world, another story began to surface, one that would test the limits of law, morality, and justice itself. That story belonged to a woman named Yang Lanlan. The storm that began with Menglong's mysterious death was now a full-scale reckoning. It wasn't just one actor's tragedy anymore. It was a mirror reflecting the corruption, arrogance, and rot at the core of China's entertainment empire. And standing right in the center of that storm was Mango Excellent Media, the corporate giant once hailed as the symbol of state-backed success. But empires built on deceit never stand for long. By mid-October, the collapse was undeniable. Mango's stock chart looked like a cliff, plunging day after day. Investors watched in horror as the company's market value evaporated, losing over 6 billion yuan, nearly 7 billion US dollars in just 2 weeks. The reason wasn't a financial scandal, at least not officially. It was something much more uncontrollable: public fury. After years of silencing critics and manipulating audiences, Mango Media was finally facing the wrath of the very people it had deceived. The boycotts were everywhere. Hashtags demanding the company's investigation spread faster than they could be deleted. Online users coordinated mass unsubscriptions from Mango's streaming platform, while advertisers quietly pulled their contracts. For an industry used to control, this was chaos. But instead of humility, Mango Media responded with threats. In a leaked internal memo that quickly went viral, a message appeared on one of the company's private chat channels. It read, "You sympathize with your fish, that's fine. But don't interfere with us. Otherwise, you'll end up just like your fish. You won't live past 30. We'll all meet together then." The reference was unmistakable. Fish was the nickname fans had affectionately given Menglong. His supporters called themselves the Fish Pond. Mango's message wasn't just cruel, it was a direct threat, mocking his death and warning anyone who dared to seek justice. The outrage that followed was volcanic. People flooded social media with screenshots of the message before it could be deleted. Influencers, journalists, and even former Mango employees began to speak out. This is who they really are. One wrote, "They think they can bully the public just like they've silenced their artists." But Mango's leadership seemed to double down. Within days, the company's Malaysian subsidiary hired the Zhangha law firm, releasing an official statement that the online accusations were false and defamatory. The letter demanded that citizens stop sharing misleading information or face legal action. It even claimed that Mango was working with Malaysian authorities and partnering with prestigious universities such as Tunku Abdul Rahman University and TAR University of Technology to promote music education and cultural exchange. It sounded polished and professional, but no one was fooled. Malaysian netizens immediately began issuing their own warnings online. "This isn't art." One wrote, its infiltration. Others urged local artists and institutions to cut all ties with Mango, calling it a predatory company hiding behind entertainment. The scandal began spreading internationally. Analysts in Hong Kong and Singapore discussed the collapse as a textbook case of corporate arrogance meeting public accountability. Every news cycle brought fresh humiliation for Mango Media. Their stock kept falling. Their content boycotted. Their name now synonymous with corruption. And then another blow struck. Prominent entertainment commentator Song Zuda, one of the most respected insiders in the industry, released a new expose that stripped away the final layer of illusion. His video was blunt, fearless, and devastating. He began by describing the money laundering pipelines that connected film studios, politicians, and overseas shell companies. Enormous sums of money, Song said, were funneled through movie productions, sponsorship deals, and fake investments, all disguised as legitimate cultural projects. So the profits were then transferred abroad to real estate in London, accounts in Singapore, and hidden luxury assets around the world. But that was just the surface. Song spoke of drug abuse, gambling, and sexual exploitation as part of the unspoken culture that ruled the entertainment scene. Many of the biggest stars, he claimed, were trapped in these cycles, not because they wanted to be, but because refusing meant losing everything. They are owned. He said, their fame is a leash, and the hands that hold it are political. The real question, a Song asked, was why none of the true perpetrators were ever punished. Have you ever heard, he asked pointedly, of a senior official's child being arrested or disappearing mysteriously? No. It's always the powerless, the ones without protection, who vanish. Then, in a chilling turn, he connected it all back to Menglong. According to Song, Yu had become increasingly uncomfortable with the corruption around him. He had seen too much evidence of offshore accounts, money transfers, and even whispered links to arms smuggling through entertainment fronts. Determined to expose it, he began collecting documents, photos, and recordings, all of it. Song claimed was stored on a single USB drive. That was the turning point. Once the people in power discovered what he had, Yu was marked, surveillance began. He was followed, his communication monitored. Then came the beatings, the interrogations, and the imprisonment at the Chihao Art Museum. What happened after that? Song said, was not a random tragedy, it was an execution disguised as an accident. Song's video was viewed millions of times before it, too, was taken down, but by then, the message had already reached the world. The entertainment industry, once seen as China's cultural pride, now looked like a machine of exploitation, a place where art served as camouflage for power. And Mango Media, the crown jewel of that empire, had become its symbol of decay. Every action the company took to silence the outrage only deepened it. For each post deleted, 100 more appeared. For every threat made, 1,000 voices answered back. People no longer saw Mango as a media group. They saw it as the face of the very system that had consumed Yu Menglong. And yet, amid the chaos, one story still lingered in the background. It was quieter but just as haunting. A woman named Yang Lanlan, once a familiar figure in Beijing's elite circles, was now standing trial in Australia. Her case, though separate, had begun to intertwine with the Menglong saga, and her strange behavior in court hinted that another layer of the truth was about to surface. Because if Mango Media represented the power, greed, and arrogance of the system, Yang Lanlan would come to represent its madness. When the name Yang Lanlan first appeared in the headlines, it was almost a side note, a minor figure connected to China's entertainment world, rumored to have ties to people linked with the Yu Menglong case. But by October, her name had become a symbol of something larger, the collision between corruption, law, and the fragile idea of justice. Yang's story didn't unfold in Beijing or Shanghai. It played out in an Australian courtroom, thousands of miles away, where the echoes of China's scandals had somehow reached foreign soil. Her trial was expected to bring clarity. Instead, it only deepened the mystery. On October 17th, and during her third scheduled court appearance, Yang Lanlan once again failed to show up. Just like the first two hearings, her lawyer, a calm, careful man named John Korn, stood alone before the judge. The entire session lasted barely 5 minutes. No testimony, no evidence presented, no explanation. The courtroom clerk, clearly frustrated, reminded Korn that Yang had already been excused once by Magistrate Megan Greenwood. But this time, the patience was gone. On November 14th, the clerk said firmly, "I would expect her to be here." The next hearing was set, and with that, the session ended short, silent, and unsettling. Outside, the public reaction was one of disbelief. How could a defendant repeatedly miss court in such a high-profile case? Why was she being protected? And what was so sensitive about her involvement that the hearing seemed to move in circles, never touching the truth? The crowd outside the courthouse told its own story. At the first hearing, as the room had been packed journalists, activists, curious citizens. But by the third, only about 20 spectators remained. Most of them Chinese Australians. The media coverage had shrunk, as if the world were losing interest. Yet those who stayed knew better. This wasn't the end. Something was being negotiated behind the scenes. According to Australian outlet The Epoch Times, Yang's lawyer quietly revealed that he was in talks with the prosecution. "We are negotiating," he said when asked why he had requested another postponement. That single sentence opened 1,000 questions. What could they possibly be negotiating? A plea deal, a settlement, or something more secret, an exchange meant to protect larger interests that extended far beyond one defendant? Commentator Jean Fei from True Viewpoint. They suggested that the negotiations hinted at a hidden arrangement, perhaps an attempt to reduce charges in exchange for silence about what Yang knew. "She's not just another suspect," Fei said. "She's a witness to the machinery of corruption. If she talks, the entire system trembles." But there was another angle, one that shifted the entire narrative. During Yang's second hearing on September 26th, her lawyer had claimed that she suffered from serious mental health issues and rarely left her home. This, he argued, made it difficult for her to comply with her bail conditions, which required her to report to the police 3 times per week. He requested it be reduced to once. At the time, the statement seemed like a legal tactic. Nothing more. But as more details emerged, people began to wonder, was this the foundation for something much bigger? Under Australian law, particularly in New South Wales, there exists a legal doctrine known as the Mental Health and Cognitive Impairment Forensic Provisions Act. It allows for a special verdict, act proven, but not criminally responsible. That means the court can confirm that a crime was committed, the act itself happened, but the defendant cannot be held legally responsible if it's proven they were suffering from a mental disorder that prevented them from understanding their actions. It's a loophole that has saved many people from prison. Instead of punishment, the accused is placed in psychiatric care, often indefinitely, until deemed no longer a danger to society. Some never return to public life. Others quietly disappear into private institutions, their names erased from headlines. So now the question became, was Yang Lanlan preparing to use this defense? If so, it could mean she'd escape formal conviction entirely, her crimes proven, but her guilt legally dissolved. To the public, it would look like a collapse of justice. To those in power, it would look like protection. The pattern was becoming clear. In the world surrounding the Menglong case, no one truly powerful was ever punished. They fell from the spotlight. Yes, but they never truly fell. Every downfall ended in silence. Every outrage dissolved into confusion. It was a cycle as old as authoritarianism itself: suppress, delay, deflect, forget. Still, even in her absence, Yang Lanlan's case offered a rare glimpse into how deeply the rot extended. It showed that this wasn't just about an actor, or a museum, or even an industry. It was about an entire system, one willing to twist law, psychiatry, and diplomacy itself to protect its own. And perhaps that's why so many people are watching November 14th. Because on that day, Yang Lanlan will finally be required to appear in court. The world will see her face. The judge will hear her voice. And maybe, for the first time, a fragment of the truth will surface. But what if it doesn't? What if, once again, the truth slips away, hidden behind legal language, psychological evaluations, and the quiet agreements of those who stand to lose too much if the truth is ever spoken aloud? If Yang Lanlan is declared not criminally responsible, it will send a chilling message to everyone who's followed this story that even when the crime is proven, justice may never come as we wait for the next hearing. One thing is certain: the story of Menglong, the Qihao Art Museum, and the circle of power surrounding them has changed how millions see their world. It has exposed the cost of silence, the weight of fear, and the fragility of truth. And perhaps that's the most haunting part of all. Because in the end, this story isn't just about China. It's about what happens when any society allows power to rewrite reality. When the guilty become untouchable. When art becomes horror. When madness becomes law. The final question remains: will justice ever find its way through the walls of silence? Or will those walls, like the concrete corridors of the Qihao Art Museum, stand forever, cold and unbroken?